What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Anti-Gravity Group podcast. My name is Braden Carlson.
My name is Taylor.
My name is Shane, or as you might know me, Postart.
And I'm Matt, too.
And keen-eyed viewers might have noticed that Taylor has a slightly different camera angle for this episode. That's very, very sneaky of you. But you probably also noticed that there's 3 more people here, unless you're just listening to this. But if you're just listening, there's 3 more people here. We're joined by a motley crew of members of the Washington Aerospace Club responsible for the giant Moonliner. And if you're part of High Power Rocketry, you're undoubtedly familiar with the project. So I'm going to throw it over to you guys. Introduce yourselves.
Yep. Hey, everyone. My name is Bryce Chanes.
Hey, everyone. Jack Poehlman.
And I'm Matthew.
And listeners and viewers of the podcast are undoubtedly familiar with Bryce. Actually, Bryce, I think this might be you taking over as the most guest appearances. I think this is your 4th time now?
It is.
Oh,
yep.
yeah.
I think you're the reigning champion now. Only Amy Howell has a chance to dethrone you, I believe. So, all right. Well, in case you've been living under a rock, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to you guys. But I want you guys to break down real quick, just at the surface level, what the Moonliner was or is. It's sitting right behind Bryce for those just listening that can't see it. But in case you missed it, a Moonliner recap real quick.
Sure. Just really briefly, the Washington Aerospace Club up in the Western Washington area last year did a group project where we flew a 30-inch diameter, 530-pound Moonliner, which is a version of the rocket out in Disneyland. Anyone who's been out in Disneyland in Anaheim knows that the Pizza Planet rocket as of 1994, and before then, the TWA Moonliner. And we built and flew this thing at a Sodblaster launch. It's a big regional launch here in central Washington, successfully on an experimental O motor using a custom designed red sparky propellant. Flight was gorgeous and beautiful. And I'm joined with 2 amazing team members, Jack Poehlman, who's not only the vice president of the Washington Aerospace Club, but also was one of the key designers of the recovery system, which brought back the rocket you see behind me safely, as well as Matthew, who did a tremendous job putting together a fantastic video on the whole project from start to finish.
And Bryce, you left out. It's the largest rocket that we know of flown in the state of Washington, on the largest motor ever flown in the state of Washington. And if that wasn't enough, it set a Tripoli record for the particular motor case class.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I do want to acknowledge real quickly that is an 8-inch diameter motor, as Bryce was quick to point out that I got wrong on one of my posts about the flight. So sorry about that. I am just, 6 inches already so incomprehensible to the average rocket person like myself that the 8 escaped me there. But yeah, someone actually asked in the chat, is that an O motor case I spot behind Bryce? But I'm assuming in that you just pointed at that is the case from the flight.
It is. Yep. A 4-foot long, 8-inch diameter, 1/4-inch wall motor case. It can hold up to a P motor with the right propellant and grain geometry design. Because we did not get a class 3 waiver, we kept the total impulse right into the O motor range, which brought the rocket for a beautiful and successful flight.
Which, as Jack alluded to, and Bryce alluded to as well, you can see the video on the Washington Aerospace Club YouTube channel. That is the YouTube channel name, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. I will put the link in the description when this goes live. But Matthew, I did want to commend you because calling it a beautifully done video is almost an undersell. It's a full-blown documentary, and I can't even imagine the amount of time that went into that video, but it's so perfect. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So nice work.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal project.
It was hard to condense down. I think it was around 14 hours of footage, almost like a half a terabyte of footage over 8 months, down to I think 13 minutes or 14 minutes, whatever it is. it took a long time. I procrastinated a lot on it, to be honest. So, but yeah, it took a long time, and thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I know firsthand how hard it is to get all that data compressed into a digestible package. And if you look at my channel, you know sometimes I just don't. So, but I want to take a step back here a little bit. Like you said, Bryce, before the Pizza Planet rocket, it was the TWA Moonliner, and we've talked about this on a Rocket Vlogs video before. But if you could go into depth a little bit more on the origin of the TWA Moonliner and how you guys landed on this for the project. Real quick, I do just want to say, though, for anybody in the live chat, if you have any questions for our guests, please fire them off right now, and we will get to them once we come back around.
Yeah, that might be a good question for Jack to talk a little bit about some of the history of the project. Do you want to take that one, Jack?
Yeah. So, Braden, was your question around the history of us building it specifically, or the Moonliner rocket in general?
Well, I think if we can dive into the Moonliner itself a little bit, because we do have two Kansas City natives here that have some TWA heritage. So if you want to dive in, let's dive in.
Yeah, that's so the particular model we built, as Bryce kind of talked about, was 30 inches in diameter, 22 feet tall. Is Moonliner 2. If you look at there's a great Wikipedia page that goes over Moonliner and a lot of its history. So Moonliner 2 was on top of the TWA building in, I believe, Kansas City, Missouri. I think it's back there now, if I understand it. Maybe, Matt, you can confirm.
I think so.
And
yeah,
and it was
Matt.
My bad. I know. Yeah, I haven't been downtown recently, but we can check.
Fair enough. Cool. Well, you'll have to send us a picture. I'd love to see it. But my understanding was it was, kind of the marquee of the building, if you will. And there's a version of it that is in a museum in Kansas as well at this point. But so it's kind of cool that we went after building a full scale version of this particular rocket. The first version, I think, was one built for Disney. Was a concept between Werner von Braun and Walt Disney, kind of a back of a napkin. Disney asking Werner, well, hey, if we're going to take people to the moon, in theory, what would a passenger flight rocket look like? And kind of out came a V2-ish looking rocket. It was supposed to be, I think, 800 feet tall. I don't know what the diameter was. And then that turned into an 80-foot tall scaled version, was the first one that was at Disney. That has been since replaced. I think there's been 2 or 3 that have been at the Walt Disney Park. The current one's 60 some odd feet tall, so just slightly downscale.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been our design kind of was born out of the Brown line drawings that showed up at an auction at one point in time. The designer, Mr. Chanes, was able to take those into Fusion and just kind of started with the full scale version that was in those drawings, and then all of the different things that we did from there were scaled off from that. So kind of over my head, you see our 4-inch version that we produced as a first to prove out the flight aerodynamics, and would this thing really fly stably? And turns out it does, just like a V2 or a lot of other types of rockets with weird shapes like this. From there, we kind of scaled up to a 12-inch that we flew at LDRS last year in California. That was a lot of fun. That flight was intentionally kind of pushing the limits a little bit, where we had some ground wind that was well within the range of, should we really fly this or not? And I think it worked out okay. That flight was mostly going horizontal at apogee, and therefore deployed parachutes as rockets do at a reasonably high horizontal velocity, and still came back mostly intact.
Yeah, do remember how windy it was when you guys flew that, and I was like, all right, well, this should be quite interesting. But like you said, it's you pushed it to find the limits, and it worked. It did. So did that drag separate, or did it deploy early?
Deployed
Or-
early.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Or, well,
I remember.
Early, it deployed. At least from the data, it deployed at what one of the altimeters said was apogee. It was, descending slightly. So according to the altimeter, it was right at where it should have been. But it was definitely going at a pretty good clip horizontally.
Okay, so if we can talk about the design a little bit, like you said, the scaled drawings, I think this is something interesting to talk about for people who are interested in doing a big project, especially if it's something like this where, the Moonliner's not in Rockets of the World. It wasn't on the Peter Alway radar. So, what was your reference material? I can't imagine there was much in the world of scale, right?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about kind of the general design. As Jack alluded to, it was very helpful to have access to some of the original engineering drawings for the Moonliner that was built for Disney. Coincidentally, a couple of years ago, those actual engineering drawings went for sale at auction, and as part of that sale, they took lots of beautiful pictures of those drawings, and so we can actually use those as original reference material to kind of start with as kind of the skeleton for the design. There is still a tremendous amount of work in kind of translating that design from not just the full scale size, and it'd be awesome if we could just hit scale and the whole thing shrinks down to the size we need. But as Rocketeers, right, we need things like couplers, compatible body tubes, motor mounts. Believe it or not, the real one didn't have fins, clear acrylic fins in it, so we have to design kind of all of these rocket related features in after the fact. And it was tricky. It was challenging to kind of incorporate all that. And part of that was it was really important to build a scale model as early as possible in the process. I mean, we were flying subscale models in January and February of last year. 8 months before the flight of the vehicle, just to make sure that we were starting off with a successful design from an aerodynamics point of view. I knew that we were probably going to need clear fins. We did some tests early on where we said, hey, what if we left the clear fins out? Turns out you could maybe make that work with the right nose weight and calm flying conditions under the right motor set. But we also demonstrated some reasonable instability as part of that. Once we added fins to that design, kept the CG up into the nose of the vehicle, we demonstrated a lot of successful stability. And going back to that flight at LDRS, a lot of our goal was, is this thing stable? I know from kind of my engineering work that designs that work in small scale don't always scale up to be stable in large sizes. And so it was very important to me before I put a 500-pound rocket on the launch pad that I can convince myself and, of course, convince the public and RSOs that we're going to have a safe and successful design, because there's nothing scarier in my mind than an unstable 500-pound rocket. And in so doing our homework there was really critical to the success of the project, for sure.
Taylor, are you going to talk? Okay.
Yeah,
Can you
go
talk
ahead.
about? Oh, did you have more? No.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Did you have? There's a lot of complex shapes. Can you talk about some of the techniques that you use to make some of the complex shapes of the rocket? Or
Sure.
the fabricating challenges and that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's nice about having a group project, right, is we can offload a couple different ideas to the group, see what things worked and what things didn't. We did try kind of a lot of different techniques. I built on a lot of the experiences I had building Project Sasquatch, which utilized a kind of 1/4-inch plywood ribbon stringer design to build the skeleton, and then a hot wire cut styrofoam insert inserts that would then get fiberglassed. We had a wonderful donation last year, or just slightly before last year, of a Giga printer by Elegoo. This is a 800 by 800 by 1 meter tall print volume 3D printer. So we were able to use the scale of that printer itself as kind of a practice test bed for building things like behind me, the leg structure itself. There's actually an aluminum tube doing the actual like mechanical structure through the part, but everything you see on the legs is all 3D printed. That's just a 3D printed skeleton with no fiberglass, with no additional filling or anything. It's just white 3D printed plastic, which is pretty cool to be able to print parts that size with relative ease. Jack is our kind of master of the 3D printer there. But there were a lot of challenges with a design like this because it is a kind of a complex shape. We have very important center of gravity goals for the project, and everything starts to weigh a lot when you build something this size. Each of the fins weigh over 30 pounds by themselves. Each of the motor case and motor assembled is over 110 pounds, just it. And so balancing all of the design to keep actually the nose cone as heavy as possible while you keep the aft end as light as possible forced us to kind of practice a few different techniques. The kind of approach we took was start on the nose, because I feel like when you first try to build something, it ends up heavier than you expect. And I want the nose cone to end up heavier than we expect, because that'll always be a good thing. Once we kind of figured out what things we liked and didn't like about that manufacturing method, we can kind of go and improve on that in the lower tail cone area. The rocket's really built on 3 sections, right? The tail cone, the body tube, and the nose cone. And I say body tube, it's 3 feet long. It's not even 4 feet long, versus the nose cone's over 10 and the tail cone's about 8. So it's tricky to kind of incorporate all of those manufacturing decisions throughout the process, make it look good too.
and I thought it was kind of fun when we got into the tail cone and had a sub team really working on that. And at one point they weighed all of the different centering rings that they'd come up with, and it was like, I don't know what, time and a half or something, the weight of the nose cone. And we went, oh, hold on. We need to do some lightening here. So there were speed holes added to a fair amount of the structure, in almost too much so at one point. But it really worked out. It was the team came together and supported the concept and definitely met the different challenges that were put in front of them.
That's some good foresight to weigh the components.
Yeah, and I would just throw a quick shout out to Matt's video. If you want to see, and the build thread on the Rocketry forum, we have a lot of pictures throughout the process. While I don't expect anybody to take that video or take the build thread as, build instructions for build your own, 30-inch diameter Moonliner, one of the main goals for our club and for this project was to share as positively as possible with the community, because it is not very often you see rockets this size get built. And when you do, a lot of times you just see the end product. You see the flight, you see the recovery, good or bad, you see a couple launch photos, and that's about it. It was really important to me, as a member of the community, as somebody who's trying to show how successful a group project like this can be. It was very important to share kind of every nuance of the project throughout that design and build and test life cycle.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not instructional per se, but I definitely do think people should take it as a influential sign that they should be building a big rocket with a bunch of their friends, because that's something that we preach quite often on this podcast. The more people building big rockets, the more we get to see. So please grab your friends, and build a giant rocket. It does help to have, Bryce, as you can see in the background if you're viewing, has a shop, and Taylor had a big garage. So if you especially have a friend with space like that, great thing to have on your side.
Yeah. I'm
Certainly.
curious to know, how do you guys transport it?
You can see part of it there with Bryce. So we ended up having to build a transport stand for it, and this kind of came together the week before the launch. There was a lot of conversation about, well, how do we transport it? Do we stand it up in multiple pieces or whatnot? And I was kind of a fan of, hey, let's transport it as one piece. Let's get it out to the launch more or less in a state that we don't have to do very much to go fly it. So trip to Home Depot and a bunch of 2x6s later, we threw together, basically a 2x6 frame structure, 45-degree angles to support it, and then to support the base of it or go under it, got some load straps that were 30,000 pound load straps, just basically because they were, I think, 6 inches wide or 4 inches wide, whatever they are, but just the perfect width to sling under it, and supported it at the different joints. So it transported on the stand horizontally, on a trailer, and moved out from there.
Wow, awesome. That's cool.
I have to wonder if people thought it was like a component for a wind turbine driving down the highway. For those viewing, I just pulled up a picture of it getting towed, but it's very suspect looking. I can only imagine what people thought as it was going by.
Yeah, it reminds me we didn't have it. We didn't have the decals on it yet. As we pulled up to the field, we kind of ran out of time to get that, and did it on the field, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We all know, well, maybe we don't all know, but recovering a 500-pound rocket is quite a feat. Can you elaborate on maybe some of the setup and what it took to create a successful recovery of a 500-pound rocket?
Yeah, absolutely. So, ended up reaching out to some influential folks in the community that do big stuff like this, and got some advice from them. And fortunately, we had some man-rated parachutes that were rated to recover 550 pounds safely. So, looking at the data for those, just one parachute alone should have been enough for the entire weight of the rocket. And we said, well, why have one when you can have two? So went with two of those QS 550 parachutes. And the real key was, how do we carry the load? How do we bring the load of this rocket from the parachutes to supporting the entire structure? Given the motor case was kind of the most hardened point of the whole thing, there was a forged eye bolt on the top of the motor case, and we had two recovery harnesses that went all the way down to it, along with a big, think of a off-road recovery shackle that held onto the harnesses. So they went all the way up through a pair of parachute bays. So we, instead of having it separate like you would normally have a rocket slide apart at a coupler or something like that, we said, well, let's keep it all together. We could have probably separated into two different pieces and recovered it separately, but instead it was one solid piece. The two parachutes came out from the side, and then the recovery harnesses, went all the way down to the motor case, and it worked. Such a huge relief to see that thing with the two parachutes coming out. I will tell you, in our internal meetings that we had after the flight and reviewing it, I think I called it the 2 seconds of terror. When it had reached apogee, and we waited for the parachutes to come out, and looking at that data, it all aligns. The flight computers did exactly what they were programmed to do.
Awesome.
I think I would make some adjustments in settings next time.
Was there any landing damage?
Less than I expected. I don't know. Bryce, Matthew, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's typical high power, heavy rocket landing damage. We designed the feet of the rocket to have a pretty substantial, like kind of 3D printed crush element to it, and they were definitely damaged on landing. Um, as part of that, as the rocket kind of tips over, one of the shroud lines catches the nose tip and kind of snaps it off the top of the vehicle. But in terms of recovery damage, no. I mean this thing is fully capable of being flown again if there's the desire to do that, with very minimal uptake and work. There's a few wrinkles and things in some of the fiberglass in the nose cone as part of that landing, but also part of that is transport damage. I always tell people that rockets are far more likely to get damaged on transport to the range than they are during flight, minus catastrophic flight failures, of course. So yeah, no, it was tremendously successful in its recovery. In fact, we'll probably mention this later on as well. But part of the reason the Moonliner is out right now, because no, I don't store it in the middle of my workshop like this all the time. And I do love you guys, but pulling a 500-pound rocket out of its storage area is many people's worth of work to go and do. But actually, tomorrow morning, we have a visit from the Museum of Flight and their curation team to kind of assess the state of the vehicle and potentially help answer the question if they might be interested in it being curated as part of their museum archives, which I'm really excited about for a couple reasons. None the least of which is having a rocket this size out of my storage area. But it's going to be really. I'm really curious to see what they say. We don't know too much until then, but it is in such nice condition that it's not out of the question that they may like adding it to their collection. It's certainly historic for the state of Washington.
So that kind of ties into a couple of questions here that are all pretty related, but whether, for one, you bring it to Airfest, I know the answer to that, but I'll let you guys elaborate on that one. But if there's any plans to fly it again.
Yeah, there currently are not any plans to fly it again. With regards to Airfest in particular, I love the Cloudbuster group. I really wish I could come out to a launch out there sometime. Unfortunately, Airfest happens to be the same weekend every year as our regional launch here in the Pacific Northwest. And so, especially as president of one of the largest clubs in the area, I always find it a lot more magnetic to my attention to be there for our big regional launch than it is to be at Airfest, unfortunately.
There would a change, of course, if the Cloudbusters happened to host LDRS. So I'm just, I know Corey listens and I know Amy listens. If you guys feel like, going through that, then maybe there's a big Washington project at Argonia potential there.
I can't promise that, but I think it would be very likely that if there was an LDRS out in Argonia, that the Washington team will be out there in force with a spectacularly cool project, or 2, or 3, or 4.
I would definitely go back to Kansas for LDRS again. I was there for 38. And would go back in a heartbeat. A little further drive for me from Washington than it was when I lived in Texas, but yeah,
we feel the pain. It's about 25 hours each way for me and Shane.
Yep. So a red Sparky is certainly not something that you see often, let alone in 8-inch form. You want to talk about that a little bit?
This might be a good question for Matt, if you want to talk a little bit about some of what you saw as part of the testing and the kind of video aspect of what you know about the kind of red motor, and I can fill in any gaps in that.
Okay. I'll be honest. I don't know much about the actual um, mixture, the components or whatever. But we had strontium nitrate, right, to make it red, and then big titanium sponge for the sparks. I think we did a test with a lot smaller titanium, and we found that it wasn't that sparky, so we added more titanium and bigger chunks, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, we started off way before the Moonliner project with the propellant we call Wildfire, and it took a lot of iterations to kind of get to where it was flight ready. So we did like a lot of characterization tests from, I think it was 38 millimeter all the way up to we did a stag test of the 8-inch motor a couple months before the flight just to make sure it's all good, which was really cool. At that point, that was the largest amateur rocket motor ever fired in the state of Washington. And that was, for me, the biggest motor I've seen, I believe. Actually, that's not true. I've been to balls, but it was pretty cool to see it from only 1,500 feet away. So that was pretty cool. A lot of sparks. Yeah.
The video element of that test is one of my favorite things ever because the titanium raining down after the motor burns out.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of fun text conversations with Bryce, but it was one of my favorites when I sent him a message about the video. I was like, dude, that motor was nuts. Or I think I said specifically the titanium was nuts. And he replied, yeah, it actually was nuts. And the actual material name for the titanium was titanium grape nuts. Is that what it was?
Grape
Bryce?
nuts. Yep.
Indeed. Yeah, this is not your typical kind of propellant additive, right? This is almost like gravel in size for titanium, which is pretty cool. And added a bit of challenge both from a safe processing side. So you want to make sure you're really safe when adding metallic particles that big into a mix. But it led to a tremendous effect. And again, another plug for Matt and his video skills. There's a tremendous video on our YouTube channel that is just about that full scale static fire. And if you watch, I would say you have to watch closely, but I don't think you have to watch very closely to see and hear the titanium chunks that are being launched out of this motor vertically, flying 100 or 200 feet in the air, and then raining down on the ground around you. And you can almost hear the metallic rain of sparks throughout that process. It was pretty special to be there, and it was definitely a bunch of fun putting together that propellant design and working it into a motor that's 8 inches in size. It's really funny when we talk about the motor as a club. We haven't built that many projects. This was our third year of doing group projects with the Washington Aerospace Club. And to do an 8-inch diameter motor, I always laugh that I feel like a lot of club members have a very skewed kind of perception of what is big in this hobby now, because putting together a project this size could have been, somebody's project before they're level 1 or level 2 certified, right? And to help assemble a motor and help put together a project of this size, I think I always laugh because there's an 8-inch diameter motor case right here, right? Probably one of the largest amateur motor cases, anybody has ever seen in their life, right? Outside of a very, very small group of people. But here in the Seattle area, it's like, oh yeah, 8-inch motor case. Well, why don't we just use that for our next project? Like, that's like easy peasy, but on the other hand, it's, 4 times the volume of a 98 15360. It's kind of funny to reset the baseline for people and remind them that it doesn't have to be any bigger than this to be a monstrous project.
Yeah, that's comparing it to a 98 15360 load is a great basis of comparison because, the vast majority of the hobby isn't even going to fly a 98 15360. So twice that impulse and propellant and just volume is insane. And you guys made it look so easy that it doesn't really seem that trivial. But I did want to ask, in regards to the grape nuts, one, how the nozzle looked after, and if you guys needed a new one for the flight, and two, if the camera gear all survived, because I've had plenty of GoPro lenses get torched thanks to titanium.
I can let Matt answer the camera survivability question.
And Matt, you have to tell us, how did you get the startup sound from the camera?
Oh yeah. So surprisingly, all the cameras were fine. No sparks damaged any cameras. Let's see. So for the startup sound, I put a GoPro right on, like attached to the test stand, right by the nozzle, and the sound it made when it came up to pressure, the motor, is just undescribable. I don't know. It was amazing. So I got that beautiful sound from the GoPro. But yeah, surprisingly, no damage. Even the like little PLA 3D printed mount I made to attach the GoPro to the test stand was completely fine, which was very surprising. I thought the GoPro was going to be completely melted. It was probably 8 inches away, maybe a foot away from the nozzle. We also had a very nice, expensive high-speed camera right by the motor that we triggered from a remote Wi-Fi link. That was completely fine. Yeah, it was definitely, watching back the footage, I was very surprised that there was no damage with all the titanium raining down.
And what's nice too, you Braden, you mentioned about the nozzle. You'd be surprised, as I was, how beautiful the nozzle ended up. There was no damage. We reused the nozzle for the flight, as we did for the static test, and it's still going along. I think the only I'll say damage is really kind of a fun aspect. Our motor doesn't use a traditional circular core down the middle like most hobby motors do. We have a 8-pointed finocyl, or almost gear shape if you look at the cross section, and you can see kind of shadows of the cross section on the inlet of the nozzle as kind of particles naturally kind of impact in those 8 areas first, which is kind of cool, but not any damage in any way, which is pretty spectacular.
That's crazy. I mean, anybody who's been in the hobby for a while has heard the legendary story of Ron Urinsko using number 4 titanium hardware for Sparkies at 6-inch. And that's, I mean, you guys are right there. It's got to be pretty similar in size. I always wondered how that would affect graphite, but that's crazy. Yeah, I would have expected you to be like, yeah, single use for sure.
No,
the graphite definitely holds up, the graphite definitely holds up much better than the phenolic nozzles that we did in some of the smaller scale testing. We had one nozzle that increased by a good 40-50%, Bryce.
Yeah, Aerotech nozzles don't stand a chance against the titanium, as would be a surprise to nobody. But shockingly, the graphite did actually do a fantastic job, and and we're gonna reuse it a few more times this year, hopefully.
That's a good data point. All right, anyone from the AGG? Anything you guys want to touch on at this point?
I've got maybe a silly question. I guess 2 parts of it. One, did you guys ground test the parachute deployment? And 2, what size were the chargers that you guys used, if you can recall that?
Sure. So yes, we absolutely ground tested. In fact, that became a gating criteria for the flight. Bryce was like, we'd done some subscale testing, and we'd done some individual bay testing, and Bryce said, well, before he's going to okay this thing to fly, he absolutely wants to see 2 entirely, completely, all up successful deployment tests. So yeah, and Matt did another awesome, great high-speed video compilation of like all of those different tests that we did. But charge size, I think we ended up with 10-gram charges or so.
Okay.
And it was a 12-inch bay that the parachute sat in, 12-inch by about 16 inches long. So one on each side. Okay. There you go. Bryce is bringing over the cover.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So this is the cover for the parachute bay. And again, I recommend people check out the video for some more information. But essentially, along the body tube, these two parachute bays on 180 degrees get shot off the side of the vehicle. It doesn't separate like a traditional rocket with like a coupler, although I guess there's technically like a very little amount of coupler on these bay compartments.
Yep. And then the string you see Bryce holding was attached to a deployment bag, and so there was a pilot chute that pulled that cover away and ultimately pulled the deployment bag off the parachute.
Awesome. Okay. Another question to the group is, what was maybe like the most challenging, the most challenging, maybe engineering challenge part of the rocket? Do you guys have anything?
For
I
me,
would say,
go ahead, Jack.
Bryce. I was going to say that the legs and that whole fin arrangement was a section that we took a lot of time on. We had a lot of different opinions on how to lay it out. The original design has a support tube in the inside that actually changes angle, and that certainly would make it look fully realistic. At the end of the day, the angle was a few degrees, and I won out in the simplicity of, hey, we have a tube, it's straight, I think we can make it work. But Bryce, what was your most complex area?
Yeah, I was going to say, easily the most complex is the fin section. To both make them modular, such that we can kind of assemble it from a handful of pieces, make it removable and easily attachable, make them look really good because they are kind of the like showpiece of the project. And make them successful and safe, right? The whole vehicle lands on these things when it lands, but also they're critical to the stability and safety of the flight. So, absolutely, as the chief engineer for the project, my main concern was, how do we make these fins lightweight but strong and make it be successful manufacturing wise, but also we have to transport it. It might be hard to tell here, but just sitting on the stand, it's probably about 8 feet tall with just one of the legs on it. So they needed to be removable. They needed to be assemblable on site. In fact, the legs don't get assembled to the rocket until it's vertical on the pad. So all of that had to be done with all of those constraints in mind.
That makes sense. Did you guys have any day of challenges, with getting the rocket upright and anything that was not, or I guess unforeseen? There you go.
I'll say one of the things that was really challenging for me a day of was just coordination with the range. This is a very special project that has very unique constraints with regards to the amount of people out at a launch pad, the distance a launch pad is away from spectators and LCO. And so there were a lot of challenges we faced as the Washington Aerospace Club, interfacing together with the Tri-Cities Rocketeers, the kind of hosts of the Sodblaster event, that we are absolutely, we are participating in their event, and we want to make sure that everything from their landowners to their safety team, we're all satisfied throughout that process, in well communication throughout the assembly of the vehicle, through the placement of the launch pad. Like, there were a lot of firsts for this. It's one of the reasons a project like this could be very rare in the state of Washington. We won't be flying a rocket like this again at Sodblaster, for example. Not because anything bad happened, but because there are a lot of challenges with interfacing with a range that is not familiar with rockets this size. And so there were a lot of special constraints and special challenges we had to work through long ahead of the launch, but also be really flexible the day of the event to make sure everybody on all sides of the safety equation were satisfied. So to me, that was part of my job as the lead to handle, and was definitely a challenge the day of for the event.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and if you watch the video, you'll see there's some beautiful footage of the team carrying the rocket out of the field. Well, the team is carrying the rocket out of the field because that was the authorization we got from the powers that be at the launch. Was you guys can take the trailer out to load it, but you're going to have to carry it out of the field when it lands.
Fun. Okay.
And I should mention one more thing too, just to make sure I say it here. This is a Washington Aerospace Club project, but it could not have been successful without the team at the Tri-Cities Rocketeers, working together with us throughout the design, throughout the manufacturing process, throughout the testing and development process, in order for us to feel confident as a state rocketry program to fly this safely. So we can only bring a rocket we feel is safe to a launch, but it required the Tri-Cities Rocketeers team to work with us as well. And so a huge thank you to the Tri-Cities Rocketeers for giving us the opportunity to fly a rocket of this magnitude.
Nice.
Yeah, I wanted to go to Sodblaster for a long time, but to your point earlier, and the opposite issue is that it's the same weekend as Airfest every year, and I'm at this point pretty well nailed to Airfest. So, but yeah, we can definitely relate, not quite to the same scale, but we can relate to having to carry a big rocket out of a field. It's the first Punisher one where we still had a loaded N and it was 2 loaded 75s in the rocket, made it quite the experience. The nice soft dirt getting that thing out of there. But okay, well, Taylor, did you have something to ask? It looked like you were getting ready to fire something off, but I did want to talk a little bit about the video stuff. But first I wanted to ask real quick, because Bryce, you said there's no fiberglass reinforcement or anything on any of the 3D printed parts. And I know, Jack, you were kind of the spearhead of the 3D printing stuff, I believe, correct? But what filament, what material are you printing these things out of?
Pretty basic off the shelf PET G is what all of the stuff was printed out of. So
Bless.
At this scale, it was all about economy. So it was turns out Elegoo's PET G is the one that came in at about $10 or $11 a kilogram when you buy it at scale, and it worked well in the printer. So just
Nice.
went with that. In fact, I think the leg that's behind Bryce is printed in 2 pieces, and the first piece goes from right by Bryce's head to where you see the strut piece.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, so this is 1 meter long.
Oh, it's
There's
3 pieces. That's right.
There's actually
wow.
1 more meter, and then in order to get the legs on, there's a 3rd piece on the back end.
Nice.
There you go. But it was and those prints, I'd have to go back and look, were under 2 days per leg. It just when you go to that scale and you start printing with like a big nozzle, a lot of the times we were printing with either a 1 millimeter or a 0.8 millimeter nozzle.
I was curious about that. Yeah. What kind of resolution? That's wild.
Yeah. It goes relatively quick, and for those that aren't familiar with 3D printing, a normal nozzle would be like a 0.4 millimeter, and a layer height of 0.15 or 0.2 is probably pushing it. I think we were printing at like a 0.5 layer height with a 1 millimeter nozzle. So
getting close to those concrete 3D printed house levels of material output there.
Yeah,
cool.
There you go.
Quick follow-up question to that. Roughly how much filament was used on this project?
On this one, I think the only major 3D printed parts were the legs themselves. Very little. I think it's like a 3% infill. So little that you can very clearly see it if you look in the light. And they're I think the print themselves were like 3 or 4 kilograms maybe per leg. So not that much. There were some other little fitting things like the parachute bay. We had a backer piece that was 3D printed, but it was negligible. I think we probably wasted more filament in testing things. Like I think when we were at LDRS, we had a sample of a skin that we were thinking about for the nose section that was a vase mode 1-layer print. In the end, the team was like, "Nah, we'll just fiberglass it," and it turned out beautiful. Either way, I think would have been fine. It was kind of go with what the team, what skill set they want to develop, and that's where we went. Yeah, and the little silver portals you can see there were little 3D printed portal frames that Matt actually designed, I think, a few days before the launch. I was like, "Matt, can you get me some portals?" And he went in the Fusion file, threw them out, said, "Here, print these." So
Nice.
they were just, things that we did for decoration, more or less, at the launch.
Nice.
Like I said, I wanted to touch on some video stuff, Matt. If you, what video or what cameras did you guys have on board, and how much color grading were you doing? Because the quality of the footage, I'm like, my God, it's so perfect.
So on board we had 2 run cameras, like run cam, 4K, whatever. We actually had them hooked up to a custom board that we could like start them from the flight line, because they were really high up on the cockpit area. So we were able to record them or start recording soon before flight. We had I had my GoPro on one leg facing, I want to say, down. We had a cheap knockoff kind of GoPro action camera facing out on another leg. We had a 360 cam on one of the other legs. Sadly, it didn't record, which is really unfortunate. I think that's it. So there was 5 cameras on board, which, thankfully, I think out of those 5, we got 4 good, videos out of them. There was very little color grading on the actual like footage. I did like a little bit of, here and there. I think the biggest thing was, I don't want to get like too nerdy into this. I'm not sure how in depth to go, but a lot of the build up footage, we're putting it on the pad. That was filmed on a very nice cinema camera, in like log format. So I had to do a lot of video, what do you call it? Color correction, color grading for that. But overall, all the footage came out pretty nice.
Man, for one, guys, we should be taking this as a sign that my theory of just putting way more cameras on the rockets is the solution. We've had plenty of problems not having onboard footage on our big projects. Knock on wood, we've had good luck the past few flights, but I'm saying we just throw the kitchen sink at it. We put 4 or 5 on these things. But it came out so good, and I'm happy to hear that people have luck with the run cams, because those things still just beat me to death every time I try and use them. But yeah, it was, again, I just want to compliment the work on that video, because it was incredible. I mean, it's cinema is what it is. It's beyond a YouTube video.
I have
go ahead. I was about to ask if anybody has questions.
I got a little question. Okay, this question's for you, Matt. This is kind of maybe more of an artsy question, but so when it came to the videography, was there a specific, shot that was key for you to try to capture, or like was there like a story that you were wanting to tell with the video that you were capturing, or what did you have like an approach to the whole?
See, that would have been really good to have, but instead I just got a bunch of footage and had to work out how to make it make sense, and that was one of the hardest things. Even though there was over like 14 hours of footage over an 8-month build, it's not actually that much footage. So that's what took the longest about the video. The hardest part about the video was just trying to like piece it together, because there would be long, like 2-3 month gaps between footage where it's like the nose cone starts out with just like, some plywood ribs, and then the next shot is like it's fully done and there's foam on it, and it's fiberglass and all that stuff. So trying to make it, coherent. That was one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
During the actual flight, I didn't take like any videos. We had someone, a team member who works at a local news station, film a lot of the actual assembling it on the pad and the recovery and all that kind of stuff, which is really good to have, not having to worry about that. And since that's kind of his job is film stuff, he was really good at it, and so he got a lot of amazing footage that I was able to piece together and make something I'd say pretty good. And then along with like just the footage on the actual rocket and that stuff, we got some other members that are big into videography and that kind of stuff. So I was working with them to like get all the different camera angles, all the shots. We just kind of like, if anybody has a camera they don't really care about, put it on by the pad, like get all the angles we can get, and we'll see what we can do in post later.
Nice.
Yeah, it is not an intuitive process to film every step of building a big rocket. I definitely have some footage buried somewhere in my archives when we were building the Punisher and the Double Arcus, because both of those were in the summer, where like if you look you can tell Taylor was ready to throw hands that I was taking the time to set a camera up, because we had epoxy flash curing in 12 minutes while we were fiberglassing stuff, and one day we were sanding for 10 hours and I kept changing the camera angle, and it looked like I was about to start a fight, but I was like, listen.
Typical Taylor.
Filming projects is really hard. It's like, I just want to focus on the build. I don't want to like you said, set up cameras and all that stuff. So I think for this year's builds, I'll be a lot more mindful of like documenting it and getting video and stuff.
I wanted to kind of jump
with
in
the GoPro.
I was going to mention, as project lead, one of the things for the Washington Aerospace Club, we're all wearing our club shirts right now. Our club motto is inspire, build, launch, share. That's, really important is not just the kind of flying, but also the sharing of what we do. And through each build session, I tried to make a point to always document. One of the things I didn't do well was document in video. Because to me, growing up, it was always, hey, we have a build thread. We got to take some pictures, right? Individual pictures of it throughout the process. And had I, in retrospect, I guess I would have suggested, a combination of pictures are great. You can always take nowadays with the camera phones in our pocket, right? Even just shooting a video and grabbing screen grabs if you need to post just a picture is plenty good enough quality wise, in my opinion, anyway. And then to the launch, I can't say how thrilled I was with the success of the photography side. My only and absolute only contribution to the video that Matt put together is the thumbnail photo, which is this remote Canon 5D Mark IV with an audio trigger located at less than 100 feet away from the pad. And really one of the things I idolize in these projects is the launch photo. I want something on my wall. I want something as my background photo. I want something to be the Tripoli membership card. Didn't quite make it this year, but maybe next year. And it was just I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to borrow that sound trigger from Jim Wilkerson, who was unable to make the launch, and ended up with a spectacular, series of photos that I couldn't have asked for anything better for. It was really a great time, and getting help from Jack and Matt and other club members as well. Shout out to Carl, who's kind of our designer for our new kind of merch and our club brand, to help set the scene for Washington Aerospace Club being a name people have heard of now. It's not just Bryce and his project. It was always, I wanted to make sure that the club was at the forefront of what people remember out of the Moonliner project. Yes, it's built here. Yes, I kind of led the engineering. Yes, there was a lot of experience from myself that went into this project as kind of, I will say, hopefully Jack would agree with me, easily one of the most experienced members of the team building and flying rockets this size. But I never, ever want people to think that this was my project. And the video that Matt put together, the build thread we had lots of members contribute to, kind of all helped me in my mission to let people know that this was a club project, very much so. I could not do it by myself, and that was pretty important throughout the process.
Well, I mean, it definitely translated well, so that's it's definitely on the radar now for sure. And I mean, in my books, you guys are on the same level. Bryce, you'll know the Arizona Rocketry, the upscale rocketry people, and Roy Pullmantier and crew in Nebraska and all that. It's same level stuff. So it's you guys are definitely in the history books for big rocket stuff. But taking a step back just a second to your video versus picture documentation thing is actually worth noting, because a lot of people ask in the first place when they want to make rocket videos, if you're just doing builds and stuff, what to shoot with. Friend of the show, Joe Barnard, pointed me in this direction, and I can now say that about 95% of what I shoot that's not at a rocket launch, and a lot of it that is all just on an iPhone now. iPhone 15 Pro, set it to most compatible. So if like you said, you just still have to take the time to think about it. But it's remarkable, to your point, camera phones, how great it is now. So just gotta do it. But yeah, excellent work, guys. Someone actually did drop the perfect segue question here in the live stream that I actually had written down, which we're gonna get to in a second. But I do want to ask, before we ask that one, what advice do you guys have for people who want to do something like this? Because we've built big rockets, but all of our big rockets are just rockets, right? We're off the shelf tubes. We made a nose cone and it was pretty cool, but like, this is so out there, and it's a whole different level of a playing field here. So what do you have to tell the people who want to do something like this?
Wow.
I don't think anybody wants to answer the question.
Well, go ahead, Jack.
Go ahead, Bryce.
Oh no, okay. Well, so for me, I mean, I think one of the things that I want to tell people, right, is first of all, ask people to do this. Like, this is fun. This is an enjoyable experience. If you are part of a club, you have people around you interested in doing cool projects. Something we didn't talk very much about was funding, and maybe we can have a more pointed conversation about that in a little bit. But having a club that is a conduit for getting other excited Rocketeers together in the same room, it does take, in a lot of cases, somebody with some space to put together. But it doesn't have to. You don't have to do a 30-inch Moonliner, right? We did an 8-inch diameter project last year, which I would argue is easily small enough to do as a group in like a single bay garage type environment. But step one is asking, right? Saying, hey, I'm interested in doing a group project. Is there anybody else who thinks this might be fun? Step two is deciding on a project that's appropriate for the level of skill of the individuals working on it. And maybe I would always suggest perhaps one step beyond what the current level of skill is. Maybe not 2 or 3 steps beyond, but a little bit pushing it is what makes it interesting and fun to me. And then I think one of the key things for a project of this scale, Jack alluded to earlier, is ask for help when you need it. Ask for guidance. Ask for reviews when you need it. Tom Cohen was a huge help in aiding our recovery system design and helping work together on these bigger, more complicated, unique shaped vehicles, right? And he was an instrumental supporter of this project from day one. and a handful of other folks that help. So we live in a digitally connected community. I've done group projects with people all over the world, contributing different portions of projects and bringing them together. But just ask, just say, hey, here's what I want to do. Who's interested in helping out, and offer what you can toward that process. And I think if you do that often enough, you'll build a team of people who can help out.
Yeah, I would add in there. A lot of it's just about getting started. Get a couple of core folks that are interested, and see who else comes along. This particular project, because of its complexity, we started small. But one of the things that helped drive the project that I had a lot of fun with, a lot of long nights as well, was we sold these 4-inch kits that it kind of helped fund the project, but having that flight that we did on, I think it was December 31st of 24, as that thing flew, I went, wow, welcome to WAC 2025. This is going to be awesome. It had just the perfect, most beautiful flight. And we knew there was a lot of work ahead of us from there, but at least we had something that was a basis to start from. So I think that's a big piece of it, is just get started. And don't be afraid to fail. There were things that we redid along the way, and that's just going to be inevitable.
Yeah, we definitely know firsthand that once there's parts, it's real, and suddenly it suddenly becomes a very different thing. But yeah, awesome. All right, my AGG crew, what do you guys got? Questions, comments?
I believe I've asked all mine.
I'm good.
All right. Well, that
Thank you
only
all.
leaves one, and Mob Rockets has dropped into the live chat. What's on the board for the next project?
Yeah, this is an exciting, transition, I think, for the organization. We learned a lot throughout the build and design of this mega project. And while it would be fun to say, hey, we're going to do a 48-inch or a 60-inch, like something bigger, like in more massive in monstrosity, we didn't feel like that was necessarily the right direction as a club to bring people in there. What we wanted to do this year, essentially, I'll just summarize it as we're doing multiple projects. We're actually doing 5 distinct projects this year. I can mention each of them briefly here, and you can kind of follow along on our social media or on the Rocketry forum, wherever you get your Rocketry info, to hear more about the details as they come out. In no particular order, we're doing the Red Rider, 12-inch diameter, 20-foot tall, kind of. I'll say kind of a throwback to the kind of rocketry community that remembers the stories online of this kind of exciting big project that never really got finished, and we're kind of reviving it physically and building on it on ourselves to fly on a P class. In fact, the same motor case that's here, an 8-inch diameter, 4-foot long P motor at Balls in 2026 this year. We also have a 8 times upscale Estes orbital transport, which is a really unique kit. It's we'll make it 7.5 inches, 8 inches in diameter, with a big kind of glider on the side that will glide down as part of it. That'll fly on like an M class motor, somewhere in the LM class range. Which is really exciting. We have a group of members interested in doing a little bit more kind of payload launching development. If you're familiar with the ARLIS program, they build 6-inch diameter rockets that fly CANSAT student payloads on board. And so we have a team of folks working to build and design and fly essentially what is a 6-inch diameter traditional level 3 type rocket, but with a very modular forward end to carry a wide variety of payloads, whether those are, Dream Chaser style, aero bodies on the forward end, or electronic payloads and things, which is exciting. Our 4th project is a half-scale Nike Smoke. So it's an 8-inch diameter Nike Smoke project, but not flying on your normal maybe L or M class motor. It's actually flying on a 6-inch, 65-inch long P motor, a high-performance half-scale Nike Smoke. And that'll fly at balls as well this year. And then the last project is one of the projects that is really close to my heart, which is a propulsion research team. So rather than building a rocket as part of the project, the goal is to essentially publish a research paper on solid propulsion by the end of the year. So we're teaching a lot here in the shop of how to manufacture propellant safely, how to do testing, how do you design experiments, how do you build instrumentation systems. And then once we kind of build up that skill set, we want to essentially do some sort of research project related to rocket motor design, whether that's chemistry, whether that's geometry, whether that's materials, data acquisition, kind of any of those aspects are free in right now. But my hope is that we can kind of push the kind of citizen science aspect of propulsion in this hobby a little bit more, which I think will be really exciting. So those are our 5
Bryce,
projects.
What's the name of the last team, the motor research?
Yeah, we're calling that team WARP, the Washington Advanced Rocket Propulsion Team. So that's our WARP project. If anybody ever hears that coming around, so. And those are our 5 group projects: 2 P motors, an M, and 2 M's, 2 P's, and then just a propulsion paper, essentially. So I'm really, really excited to get that many people involved in all of these projects, and that's what we're doing for 2026.
Nice light year, sounds like.
Yeah, we're taking it easy. We're going easy on ourselves this year. A teaser potentially for 2027 is the original scope for that Nike Smoke was a full scale replica flying on some big 8-inch diameter motors. So this year we're doing the half scale. I'm very confident that is going to be very successful, and then that team is hoping to build on that success into a full size Nike Smoke potentially in 2027. But we're not. It's too early to talk 2027. I wouldn't throw any ideas out of the table for what the club is up to in 2027.
Is the orbital transport glider RC? That
there is the possibility of yes, that is on the table.
To be determined.
Yep.
And I have to ask, and I'm sure Taylor is wondering too, and this is probably more Bryce specific, but what of the 1B?
Well, like I said, I'm not here to make predictions of the 2027 year yet.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. It's been a blast. We always love having you on, Bryce, and of course, Jack and Matthew. Thank you guys so much for being here. You guys are welcome anytime to come talk big rocket projects. We love it, and we know the listeners do too. So stop by. We'll talk orbital transports. We'll talk Nike Smokes. You know we're big fans of the latter, so...
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, guys, for having us. We share the same mission of making it exciting for people to learn and fly big rockets in this hobby safely and successfully. I'm really, really thrilled with how the Moonliner project went and the community we've been able to build around it. We have, every month now at our club meetings, we have folks, showing up saying, "Hey, I saw your video on YouTube. I didn't know we had a rocket club here in Seattle." And so if you happen to be listening and you're in the area, anywhere from British Columbia to Eastern Washington into Oregon, we've got lots of members all over the place. It's a whole bunch of fun, and you guys can do these projects yourself as well. Don't hesitate to hit us up and ask questions, because that's our goal. That's part of our mission to share and enjoy this aspect of the hobby.
Oh, there you go, folks. Get after the Washington Aerospace Club. we'll just go out the way we came in. We'll do our traditional outro, and you guys are free to follow along. Does anybody have any other questions? Speak now, forever hold your peace. All right. If you're listening, go ahead.
I was just saying it's inspiring stuff. That's all.
Yes.
If you are listening or you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment if you have any further questions, and I'll try and get them over to the Washington Aerospace guys for answers. You can send us an email to contact@aggpodcast.com. As well as always, my name is Braden Carlson. You can find me right here on YouTube at Rocket Vlogs. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Rocket Vlogs Official. Almost to 100K on Instagram, so go push for that. Let's get that over there. But I also want to plug the Washington Aerospace Club YouTube channel. I just checked. You guys are at 768 subscribers. Let's get them to 1,000. I want to see it happen. And follow them on Facebook as well. Keep up to date on all these projects upcoming. It's gonna be a good time. And go to aggmerch.com. Buy a t-shirt. There's a Nike smoke hat, embroidered even.
There you go.
My name is Taylor. You can find me on YouTube at the Rocket Channel, and most recent updates are on our AGG Patreon.
My name is Shane. You can find me on YouTube at Postart Propulsions, on Instagram at Shane Harris Photo, and online at hprtools.com.
And my name is Matthew, and you can find me right here, wherever you're listening to this or watching it or whatever.
Yep. My name is Bryce Chanes, Triple E Board of Director. If you are a Triple E member, don't forget to vote. Vote early, vote often. Voting for board members is open till April 11th, so please consider doing that and following the Washington Aerospace Club on Facebook and YouTube.
And I'm Jack Poehlman. You can find me at the Washington Aerospace. WashingtonAerospace.org is our website, or Washington Aerospace on Facebook and YouTube.
And I'm Matthew, the second Matthew. And go watch the whack Moonliner video and subscribe, because we have a lot of stuff planned for this year.
Yep, link will be in the description across all the platforms, no matter where you're hearing or watching this. We are the Anti-Gravity Group, and they are at least some of the Washington Aerospace Club. This is the Anti-Gravity Group podcast, and we will see you all next time.
We might just hear from Nigel the Rocket Cat. Load up the professional masterpiece, you can bet on that. A launch and a chat with them is guaranteed to be a blast. It's the Anti-Gravity Group podcast. Ooh.